So the US national parks are home to thousands of miles of unexplored caves where no one on Earth could tell you what lives inside. And trust me, you do not want to find out. These girls are about to enter an underground hell full of flesh-eating monstrosities, where friendships, betrayals, and certain death wait around every corner, and there's no hope for any of them to make it out alive. We're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the cave crawlers in The Descent. This cave is about to become their grave. Somewhere deep in the Appalachian Mountains, these two explorers, Sarah and Beth, are on their way to meet a group of friends for a caving adventure. It's been just over a year since Sarah lost both her husband and their young daughter in a tragic accident. But if she thinks that her life sucks now, then she has no idea how bad things are about to get. They meet their friends Juno, Sam, Rebecca, and Holly at a cozy little cabin just before sundown, where they'll be spending the night before setting off on their adventure the next day. Excited, they drive for miles down a winding dirt path until eventually they reach the start of the trail, where everyone takes their gear and heads into the mountain on foot. It's another long hike before they finally reach the cave. But when they get there, they quickly realize that something is not right. The cave looks way more difficult than what most of them signed up for, but their leader Juno acts like everything is just fine. Following her lead, they start rappelling down into the cave one at a time, until finally all 6 of them are reunited at the bottom of a pit. They're having a look around when Sarah notices something pretty strange. A red mark on the wall that kinda looks like a bloody handprint. Seeing no cause for alarm, she decides not to mention it to the others. But it won't be long before they realize that coming down here was their biggest mistake. Okay, sure, why not? Because there's no better place for a relaxing vacation than the uncharted caverns of death and despair. Now, personally, I could never end up in this situation because the moment someone even mentions the word cave, I am all the way out on that. To each their own, I guess, but unless these girls have a death wish, they should think twice before they take one more step. Before starting out, Juno told them that these caves were only level 2 on the difficulty scale, but we can already see that that is not the truth. According to most caving classification systems, a level 2 cave would have multiple entrances and would never require you to rappel 100 feet straight down just to get inside. Juno here is either lost or lying to everyone, and based on the fact that she had the rappelling gear with her, I'd say it's probably the latter. So before going any further, I'd want some proof that we were actually in the right spot. They're also making a huge mistake by not taking their friend Sarah's mental state into consideration. While they were hiking to the cave, Rebecca mentioned how the conditions inside can cause some people to experience intense oral and visual hallucinations. And Sarah was already experiencing these during her panic attack at the hospital. If something goes wrong down in the caves and she starts to hallucinate, this could cause her to panic and get lost or even stuck. And that could turn into a deadly situation really quickly. With this poor woman having just lost her entire family only 1 year before, I'd say that the absolute last place she needs to go is down into a dark, claustrophobic space where literally one mistake could mean certain death. But that's not even the worst part. I mean, it hasn't been 5 minutes since they entered the cave and she's already finding bloody handprints on the walls. You can tell this one is recent too, because the blood looks fresh and red compared to an older print that would look more like a rusty brown. This gives a whole new context to the dead elk that they found a few miles back. They blamed it on a bear attack, but the only bears native to North Carolina are American black bears, who are primarily scavengers that would never take down an adult elk. And even if they did, the body would be covered in claw marks, not just one bite to the neck. Before going any further, I'd point out the handprint to the other girls and get some group thoughts on what it means. Best case scenario, someone got injured here and might need help, and worst case scenario, well, let's just say it won't be long before they find out. Alright, Meat Shields, as we descend further into the abyss, we don't know what's going to be around the corner. It could be a gnarly cave monster, or it could be an evil data broker. You know, these days, it seems like everyone is collecting our data. From social media to online shopping, our personal information is being tracked and sold all the time. And you ain't even getting a cut. And while it's great to have personalized ads, it can also be a bit creepy and even dangerous. But more than anything, it's just annoying. That's where today's sponsor Incogni comes in. It's a service that helps you take control of your personal data. They work with data brokers to remove your information from their databases, making it harder for companies to track you and sell your information. And with today's special offer of 60% off, you can consider these obnoxious robocalls and spam emails a thing of the past. I've actually been using Incogni for a while now, and I've noticed a real difference in the amount of spam I get in random calls or texts. It's actually pretty dope. Like, you know how sometimes you sign up for a rewards program at your favorite coffee shop and then you get a million random emails after that? Well, Incogni helps get you off of those lists. Looking at my report, they've sent over 400 removal requests. 400! That is wild. So to get started, you put in your information and their team sends out data removal requests to these companies, and you can see the results in real time. They've got a cool dashboard where you can see how many removal requests have been made and how many have succeeded. They even have a feature where it shows you a detailed report of what company has your info and how severe of a risk they are. Very cool. If you're concerned about your online privacy, I highly recommend checking out Incogni. Go to incogni.com/howtobeat and use code howtobeat to get an exclusive offer of 60% off. That's incogni.com/howtobeat and use code howtobeat, or click the link below to take your personal data off the market. So, what are you waiting for? Take control of your privacy today and start using Incogni. After getting their bearings, Juno tells the others that the only way out is to start going down, and one by one they start wiggling their way down a narrow vertical chute. It doesn't take long before they're so deep within the cave that it's impossible for any sunlight to reach, meaning that their only source of illumination just became their battery-powered lights. With Juno leading the way, they begin winding deeper and deeper into the pitch-black tunnels until they eventually reach a small drop into a much larger chamber. Throwing a flare, she reveals that they're standing on the edge of a cliff in the middle of a massive room, where the girls all split up to start exploring. The place is like a caver's dream, but strangely, Sarah here can't shake the feeling that they're being watched. And she looks around the chamber, she swears that she hears the sound of a child laughing from somewhere in the darkness. Checking it out, she realizes that it was just some dripping water, or at least, that's what she thinks. But she's startled back to reality when Juno here drops in and interrupts her little investigation. While the other girls are breaking for lunch, Sarah looks around until she finds the path forward. It's tighter than anything they've come to yet, and Rebecca here starts to worry, because it doesn't match what she read in the guidebook. But Juno reassures them that it's perfectly safe. This time, Holly leads the way into the tunnel, throwing her bag ahead as she begins crawling through a few inches at a time. The path leads through flooded holes where she can barely keep her head above water, and into a passage that's so narrow she can only slide through flat on her stomach, until just when it seems like it's never going to end, she finally reaches the other side, and tells the others that it's safe to come through. One at a time, the other girls start following her until only Beth and Sarah are left. As she's about to crawl inside, she hears a strange animal-like sound from somewhere in the chamber behind her, but figures that it's just her imagination and keeps it moving. Everything's going fine until she reaches the extremely narrow part of the tunnel, and worried, her friends call back to see if she's alright. Panicking, the woman shouts that she's stuck, forcing Beth to turn around and pull her through. I mean, she's trying her best to keep her friend calm when all of a sudden the walls on the tunnel start collapsing all around them, leaving them with only a matter of seconds to get out before they're both trapped. Crawling for their lives, they make it to the other side just in time, but in the chaos, they accidentally lost their backup rope bag somewhere in the passage. After making sure that nobody was hurt, they have to wait until the dust clears before they can figure out where they are. It looks like going back the way they came will not be an option, but Rebecca says that the guidebook showed 2 other ways out. There's just one problem. the cave doesn't match the guidebook because Juno here brought them to a different cave. As a matter of fact, these caves have never even been explored, which means that not only are they trapped, but since Rebecca filed their expedition plans for the original trip, the rescue teams will have no clue where to find them. Okay, well, I guess we all know who's getting kicked out of the group chat the moment that they get back to civilization. I mean, seriously, Juno, what the hell? I've seen a lot of idiotic decisions before, but this one just might top them all. You might be the first people to explore this cave, but it also looks like you're about to be the first ones to die here, and when that happens, I know exactly what to write on your memorial. Here lies Juno, the big dumb moron who just f***ed up. I'm sorry that I have to tell you this, but slapping some rock girl stickers on your Bronco and parading around in an Indiana Jones hat that you only wear for pictures does not in fact make you the Tomb Raider. This trip was supposed to be about having a nice, relaxing time to help Sarah get her mind off of what happened. So tell me why you're out doing morning jogs and waking everyone up at the ass crack of dawn like it's their first day in the fucking military. If you ask me, it seems like you've got a pretty bad case of main character syndrome, but you'd better be careful because thanks to you, actually just got dangerous. And now's when we start finding out who really has the plot armor and who doesn't. You know, I had a bad feeling something like this was coming the minute you left the guidebook in the whip. But there's no way you could have predicted how truly stupid you turned out to be. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but weren't you the only one getting on Holly's ass for going a little too fast when you first rappelled in? Sure, she's the one putting people in danger when you deliberately brought them to a cave that doesn't even exist on a fucking map. If you cared about safety at all, then you'd know that accurately logging your travel plans with the park rangers is probably the single most important thing you can do. You know, just in case the tunnel collapses behind you and you end up stranded hundreds of feet underground. Playing games with your own life is one thing, but dragging 5 of your friends into it without even giving them a warning, that's genuinely psychotic. These girls have families. Well, except for Sarah anyway. Sorry, Sarah. But you get the point. With the last trip ending with her traumatized for life, you 6 should have been going to the beach or something like normal people. But now here we are trapped 200 feet below the Appalachian Mountains, and believe me when I say that you have no idea just how horrifying things are really about to get. You f***ed around, and now it's time to find out, because Juno, you f***ed up. Furious, the others all confront Juno for tricking them into such a dangerous trip, but there's nothing that they can do now besides start searching for another way out. Clearing aside some loose rocks, they eventually find another tunnel that's big enough for them to fit through, and without knowing where it leads, Sam hurries to climb inside. Luckily, Juno shouts at her to stop just as she reaches the other end, because when they look down, they see that they're standing on the edge of another giant cliff. Throwing a flare to the other side of the gap, they realize that there is no way across. This means that their only choice is to climb across the ceiling, and since they lost the backup rope bag, they'll have to do it with a bare minimum amount of gear. So it's up to Rebecca to climb across and secure the rope, and she begins making her way to the other side one painful swing at a time. And as she goes, she places some cams into the cracks above her head, using them to secure the rope at several points along the way. But strangely, as she gets closer to the other side, she notices a much older baton that's already been spiked into the rocks, even though Juno said no one had ever discovered the caves before. Using it to extend her reach, she finally makes it across the gap and tells her friends to throw over the rope, allowing them to start traversing their way across one woman at a time. Once they're able to catch their breath, they think the old climbing gear might be a sign of a way out, but Juno here is not so sure. According to her, that kind of equipment hasn't been used in over 100 years, and these caves would already have a name by now if anyone had ever made it out of them alive. With nowhere to go but forward, the girls continue into the next chamber, where they make another shocking discovery. The walls are all covered in ancient cave paintings that look like they could be thousands thousands of years old. And when Juno lights another flare, they see that it's actually a painting of the mountain showing two entrances to the cave. Feeling hopeful, they pick up the pace and start following the tunnel deeper into the mountain, but the girls don't realize that they are no longer alone. And if they had any idea what they were about to find next, then they would have stayed right here in this room. Up ahead, they come to a chamber with several branching paths, and Juno uses her lighter to check which way the air is flowing. Getting impatient, Holly rushes in first, convinced that she can see daylight at the other end. But before they can stop her, she ends up slipping into another hole in the floor, and Juno holds on for as long as she can, but she eventually loses her grip before the others can get there, and the girl plummets down into the pitch black chamber below. But luckily she survives and quickly realizes that one of her legs is completely fucking shattered, with the broken bones poking straight through her skin. It doesn't take her friends long to get down there, but while the others are taking care of the woman's leg, Sarah gets distracted by another noise that sounds just like a child laughing. And following it down a nearby tunnel, she discovers an ancient iron helmet that looks like it must be hundreds of years old. But as she sets it down, that's when she hears another sound coming from the darkness. And this time there's no way that it wasn't real. Nervous, she turns her flashlight to the other side of the room, and crouched there in the shadows is a pale, human-shaped creature that suddenly disappears the moment that it's spotted. Okay, let me just stop you right there. Nosferatu, is that you? It looks like Sarah here just figured out that they're not alone, and now I can definitely see why people stay away from these caves. I mean, this changes everything, because now on top of just trying to find their way out of here, they also have to decide what they're going to do about their new friends. Now, just at a glance, we can see that the creatures look like humans that have specially evolved for life deep underground. Without knowing exactly what they are, this already tells Sarah a lot about them, and she can use the clues that we've noticed so far to start coming up with a plan. Based on the cave paintings, we can guess that these creatures have lived here for possibly thousands of years. They may look like feral ghouls, but the paintings are actually a sign of intelligence and culture. You know, the first Europeans to arrive in this area were Spanish explorers from the 16th century, and it's possible that these creatures are in some way descended from them, because this matches up with some of the ancient gear that she's been finding all around the place. And as crazy as it sounds, we can't rule out communicating with the creatures until we've tried it. Although pronunciations have changed, 16th century Spanish is similar enough to how it's spoken today that they'd probably understand if you somehow went back in time. So if any of the girls speak Spanish, they could try just asking the guy for directions, and who knows, maybe it'll work. Now, with that being said, I think we all know that they probably just ate the Spanish explorers and would do the same to the girls if they get the chance. The cave paintings also showed that they're predators after all, so from this point out, they need to assume that they're being hunted. Unfortunately for Sarah, the other girls aren't going to believe her until they've seen the creature for themselves, but honestly, that works for me, because as long as they're clueless, then they'll be the ones who get taken out first. After what just happened with Holly, I'd explain to the other girls that we can't have anyone else running off and need to stay as close as possible in a single file line until we're out of the caves. I would act like I'm doing this for everyone's safety, but really I'm just doing it to keep myself as safe as possible. If they are predators, then they'll target the most vulnerable members of the group first, and that's obviously going to be Holly here. Now that she's got a broken leg, she's also their biggest liability if something goes wrong, so I'd let Juno lead the way and keep Holly at the very back of the group. Again, I'd act like I'm doing this so that she can take her time, when really I'm just using her as a meat shield in case we get attacked. She might get insta-killed, but at least it'll give everyone else a heads up. Then they'll have a much better chance of successfully fighting back. Just then, Juno comes to find her so that they can keep going, but now Sarah is totally freaking out. Rushing back to the others, she tries her best to explain what the hell she just saw, hoping that maybe this strange man can help them find their way out of the cave. Of course, the others are convinced that it was all just a hallucination and decide to focus on getting Holly to safety instead, but they have no idea that their worst nightmares are about to come true. Carrying their homie on their shoulders, they follow the tunnel until it comes to a waterfall. From here, their only choice is to climb straight up the wall, but when she reaches the top, Juno makes the most terrifying discovery yet. They've made it to another large open chamber where the floor is covered with hundreds of animal bones. And to make matters even worse, Juno can't even find a breeze to help them decide which way to go. Horrified, Sarah quickly grabs their night vision camera and all of a sudden realizes that one of the terrifying pale monsters has been standing directly behind her this whole time. The women scream as the creature scrambles past them on all fours and Spider-Mans its way across the ceiling before vanishing into the shadows. Juno quickly lights another flare to illuminate the chamber, and as they stand there listening in the center of the room, they hear the monster circling them in, waiting for just the right moment to strike. That's when Sarah panics and starts running for a nearby tunnel. The creature immediately returns and cuts them off. The girls all split up in different directions as they run for their lives, and the monster singles Holly out as the first target, leaping over her shoulders and biting a chunk out of her throat before she can get away. Upon seeing this, Juno rushes over to save her, but the creature shoves her away and starts fighting for the girl's body, trying to drag her even deeper into the cave. Now, while all this is going on, Sarah blindly runs away down another tunnel, but ends up falling down another hole and knocking herself out on the rocks below. So using her pickaxe, Juno fights the creature off until another one comes running in and pounces on top of her. Struggling, they roll around in the dirt until she finally gets the upper hand, killing the monster as she slams her weapon down into its chest. And a moment later, she hears another creature approaching from behind and spins around swinging her pickaxe, only to realize that she has just stabbed Beth through the neck. There's nothing that she can do as her friend falls to the ground, and hearing more of the monsters on the way, she quietly retreats into the shadows, which makes 2 victims down with 4 more to go. Okay, wow. I think it's safe to say that was a total fucking disaster. What do you guys think? And it all comes down to their absolutely horrible teamwork. Whether you're looking at the other girls as teammates or meat shields, the key to survival here was still the same. If they'd been paying attention, then they quickly would have noticed that the creatures weren't attacking as long as they all stayed in a group. It tried to sneak up behind them at first and then scattered the minute that it was spotted, until it had another chance to ambush them again. What this tells us is that the creatures don't want a fair fight. Instead, they want to circle you in, terrify you until you make a mistake, and then get the first person who splits up and makes themselves an easy target. The best strategy for survival here is to do the exact opposite of what Sarah and the girls just did. Running for your life will never work because the creatures know the tunnels 1,000,000 times better than you do, so instead, the only choice once you've been spotted is to stand your ground. First, they need to gather back to back at the center of this large open room. That's also why it was such a mistake for Juno to throw away their flare. Then they could use their pickaxes, knives, and any other weapons they have to hold the creatures off, and if they're able to kill enough of them, they might decide that it's not worth it and give up. Now that the first battle's over and they're all split up, they'll have to do whatever it takes to survive on their own until they can find each other again. Panicking is only going to make things worse, so for now, the key is to stay quiet, keep a low profile, and find the other girls so that they can figure out what to do next. Sisters Rebecca and Sam eventually find each other down one of the tunnels, with the older girl trying her best to stay quiet. Cracking some glow sticks, they set off looking for another way out, never realizing that one of the creatures was literally inches away from their heads. As for Sarah, she wakes up trapped at the bottom of a pit with nothing besides the night vision camera to help her see in the dark. She realizes that she has fallen into another chamber that's full of human bones, and it sounds like more of the creatures are already on their way. The woman quickly takes cover in a small opening just as Holly's lifeless body falls down the chute. A group of monsters scuttle out from the darkness and start tearing her to shreds. Rebecca and Sam enter a large chamber where it's too big to see to the other side, and hearing more of the creatures there, there decide to turn around and try another path instead. Sam accidentally drops the glow stick, but decides to keep going instead of turning back to grab it. The monsters keep tearing the girl apart while Sarah watches from the shadows, trying to stay as quiet as possible. Suddenly, she lets out an involuntary gasp. Whipping around, one of the creatures leans closer and shrieks directly in her face, but just when it looks like it's about to find her, they hear Juno calling her friends from somewhere up above, drawing the monsters to go chase after her instead. So she's still alone and terrified of what could be around every corner, but the other two girls aren't doing any better. Noticing that one of the creatures is right behind them, their only choice is to lie there quietly as possible while it searches the tunnel, listening for any sign of their presence. It lets out a demonic shriek that makes it almost impossible not to scream, but Rebecca notices that the monster cannot see them, and after a few more terrifying moments, it eventually begins to crawl away. Just then, Sam's watch alarm unexpectedly goes off, and the creature instantly snaps back to investigate the source of the noise. But thinking quickly, she takes it off and throws it to the far end of the tunnel, and the monster rushes past without even noticing where they are. I mean, a win is a win, but hearing the alarm, Juno starts calling out to the others again. They're fine with letting her serve as a distraction as long as it means that the monsters aren't coming after them. So elsewhere in the tunnels, the woman keeps finding arrows that the old explorers used to mark the way back out. Looking ahead, she spots one of the creatures blocking the path in front of her, but remains absolutely silent until it eventually goes away. And this fills her with a newfound confidence to start hunting the creatures back. Okay, the girls here just learned some important information about how these creatures behave, and the more that they understand about them, the better their chances are of making it out alive. Thanks to these recent encounters, now they know what senses the creatures primarily use for tracking their prey. Over thousands of years living down here in the tunnels, they've evolved with special adaptations that help them thrive underground, but also make them very different from us surface dwellers. The biggest change is obviously their total lack of eyesight. Since they spend most of their lives in caves where no daylight can reach, they've completely lost their ability to see and instead developed extremely sensitive hearing in a way that's similar to bats. This means that if you're trying to hide from them, then sound is your biggest enemy, but there are also plenty of ways that the girls can use this knowledge to their advantage instead. Knowing that crawlers can't see means that their flashlights won't give them away, so the safest thing is to keep them on at all times. That way, you can always see where you're going and never run the risk of tripping down another chute or walking into an ambush. Instead of talking out loud when they need to say something, the girls should switch to only communicating by hand signals, allowing them to stay perfectly quiet while still getting across any information. If you spot a crawler before it spots you, there's no need to panic, just remain absolutely silent like Juno did here, and it should quickly move on. Otherwise, we can use noise to clear a path, or even go on the offensive. Just like we saw with the girls' watch, the creatures will immediately go after the loudest source of the noise and focus on it until the sound stops or a louder noise draws their attention somewhere else. Knowing this, I'd go back for Sam's watch before moving on because it could be incredibly useful as a distraction the next time that they run into trouble. I mean, even without the watch, I'd start chucking loose rocks into any new chamber first before I went inside, since this might trick the creatures into coming out of hiding if they've been waiting there to attack me. If one's blocking the path, then you can just throw a stone down a different tunnel to lure it away. And last but not least, they leave themselves open for a critical hit whenever they're distracted by a noise. So, throwing a rock could be used to create an opportunity for a stealth kill if you ever need to take one down without a fight. Okay, once she's positive that the coast is clear, Sarah uses the camera to start cautiously finding her way around the chamber. And as luck would have it, she finds a canister that still contains some flammable liquid, and borrowing the pickaxe that they used to splint Holly's leg, wraps it in bandages before using her climbing tools to create a spark, turning it into a makeshift torch. Now that she can take a look around, she realizes that she's in another nest full of gore and starts following the path down downhill, hoping to find another way out. Somewhere above her, the two sisters come to a bend in the tunnel where they can't see around to the other side. Rebecca jumps around the corner with a pickaxe in her hand, but she's relieved to see that the path in front of them looks clear. Telling Sam to go up ahead, she hears a noise behind them that makes her stop in her tracks, only for one of the crawlers to drop down directly on top of her the moment that she turns back around. Fighting for her life, Rebecca starts swinging her pickaxe like a crazy woman, desperately trying to hold the creature back, but it quickly overpowers her and knocks the weapon away. Just when it looks like she's done for, the monster shrieks in pain as another pickaxe comes flying into its back. It's Juno coming to the rescue, and emerging from the shadows, she viciously snaps the creature's neck with nothing but her bare hands, saving her friends' lives just in time. It's a badass moment for sure, but there's no time to celebrate besides a quick hawk to assert their dominance, because they still don't know how many more of these creatures there are, or how the hell they're even going to get out of here. Looking over the body, Juno wants to know more about what they're up against, and Sam points out that the creatures have specifically evolved for life underground. They can't see anything, meaning that their only way to hunt is by sound. But that's when Juno gets an idea. If they go up to the surface to hunt, then there has to be another way in, and they can use that entrance to make their escape. This must be what the arrows are pointing towards, so all they have to do is follow them to find their way out. But Juno refuses to leave without going back to rescue Sarah first. Okay, now that the girls are all back together, they'll have a much better chance of survival than if they were still on their own. They know that by staying quiet, they can avoid getting the creature's attention, but they'll also hesitate before attacking a larger group, meaning that there's literally safety in numbers here. From now on, they need to make sure that they stick together at all times and never split up for any reason, even if there's trouble and they get the urge to run. If they're going to find Sarah, their best option is to backtrack to the room where they all split up. From there, they can follow the drag marks from the dead bodies over to the hole where their friend is trapped, quietly lower a rope down into the pit, and help her climb back up. Of course, this still leaves the creatures to deal with, so they'll have to be prepared for what to do if they encounter them again. So far, we've seen that their pickaxes already make great weapons, but we can upgrade their loadout even more by making clever use of the cave's most abundant resources, which are rocks and bones. The way to use rocks is pretty obvious. The girls can throw them like a ranged weapon to knock these ghouls down from the walls and ceilings for an easy kill. Now, when it comes to using the bones, that's where they can get creative. Just like Sarah, they can wrap the bones in some cloth and then use Juno's lighter to create a bunch of makeshift torches. An even more clever strategy is to create bone armor. Since the monster's favorite attack is to go for the throat and take you down instantly, I'd gather up a bunch of smaller bones from the cave floor and use a paracord to wrap them around my neck, arms, and legs. That should protect most of my vulnerable areas from any bites or slashes. Then, once they rescue Sarah, all that's left to do is to keep following the arrows to safety, and they should be home free. Somewhere down in the tunnels below, Sarah is still trying to find her way out when she hears someone shouting her name. It's Beth, who's still alive somehow, even though she's losing a ton of blood, but it won't be that way for much longer. Knowing that she's done for, she warns her friend not to trust Juno, explaining that it was her who caused this, and showing her the necklace that she grabbed when the woman stabbed her as proof. Not only does it prove that Juno's responsible, but on the back there's a motto that her husband Paul always used to say, revealing that he was having an affair with Juno before he died. Holy shit. Now that she knows the truth, it's time for Sarah to get the out of there. But Beth knows that the creatures will eat her alive as soon as they come back, and pulling her friend in close, she asks her to finish the job before they get the chance. Oh, it's brutal, alright, but she knows that it's the right thing to do, so telling the woman to look away, she picks up a rock and uses it to end her suffering. Boom, not even 5 seconds after smashing her friend's head with a rock, Sarah gets attacked from behind by a smaller creature that leaps onto her back while shrieking like a feral cat. This time, she easily flips him over her shoulder and curb stomps that f***er without a moment's hesitation. But the sounds of their battle end up attracting more attention. Grabbing her torch, she holds it up just in time to see the mama monster coming to look for its missing kid. When it discovers the body, the creature turns directly towards her and lets out a furious scream, causing Sarah to take off running without paying attention to where she's going, and she ends up falling straight into a disgusting pit full of blood. Holding her breath for as long as she can, she waits for things to settle down before quietly emerging from the puddle, trying their best not to make a single sound. For a moment, it looks like she might have lost the attacker until just when she starts to move, the creature suddenly bursts out from the darkness and starts trying to drag her back under the surface. Fighting for her motherfucking life, Sarah holds the creature off until she manages to reach for an antler on the rocks behind her, and holding it like a dagger, pierces it directly through one of the monster's useless-ass eyeballs, letting the body float away while she climbs to safety. Oh, she's just about to reach for her torch when the daddy crawler comes to check on the noise. Remaining absolutely silent, she lies there perfectly still even as the monster places its hands directly on top of her head, waiting patiently until it eventually loses interest and moves on. That's when Sarah comes sneaking up behind him wielding a bone like a club, and the instant that he turns around, she absolutely blasts the mutant right off his feet before using her new weapon to cave in his skull, letting out a terrifying war cry for any more crawlers that might be listening. Okay, well damn, Sarah here just went beast mode, and I can't say I blame her after finding out that Juno tricked them into going into this cave, killed her best friend, and was having an affair with her husband the whole time. She looks like she's ready to fight her way out of here one goblin at a time if she has to, but getting carried away and losing all sense of caution would be her biggest mistake. Even though she's clearly more capable of kicking their asses when she has to, it's always best to avoid a fight whenever possible. And this gore pit might give us a new opportunity to do just that. We already know that the creatures hunt based on sound, but this one very clearly went down and smelled the dead body. This must mean that they identify each other based on scent, and if that's true, then we could use this to our advantage. As disgusting as this would be, I'd take the crawler's dead body and cover myself in its blood and scent. Then, as she's sneaking through the tunnels, this could end up saving her life if she makes too much noise and gets noticed, because the monsters might think that she's one of their own and move on anyway. Before leaving the nest, I'd also take a quick second to pour the rest of that fuel on the ground and try to start a fire. There is a chance this might distract the creatures and redirect their focus while the girls make their escape. Once Sarah reunites with Juno, she'll have to decide whether to confront her right away or play it cool until they're out of the caves. Personally, I'd avoid a fight for now since Juno is still their best navigator. Plus, we're going to need a meat shield if things go wrong, so it's better to save that argument for another time. The girls hear Sarah yelling up from above, and Juno tells the others to keep going while she turns back to look for their friend. Sam immediately takes off running towards the entrance with her sister chasing after her. But when Juno shines her flashlight into the darkness, she realizes that they're surrounded by an entire army of these creeping ghouls. Panicking, Sam gets split up from the rest of the group and finds herself standing at the edge of another bottomless chasm. And the only way across is by climbing along the roof, but that's when the other girls catch up and start yelling at her to come back. Refusing to listen, she just hangs there dangling over the pit until, all of a sudden, one of the creatures starts heading her way. Her only choice is to swing out of the way as the monster swipes at her neck, but just as the creature tears a chunk out of her throat, she climbs onto its back and stabs it with her survival knife. And it plummets down into the ravine as she dies from her injuries just a few seconds later. Suddenly, another crawler appears and grabs her sister Rebecca by the ankles, eating her alive as it rips open her stomach with its claws and teeth. That makes 4 down with only 2 more to go. Knowing that she's next, Juno quickly turns around and leaps off of the precipice, falling all the way down into an underground lake. She ends up getting attacked by the same creature that killed Sam, but uses the girl's knife to finally finish the job. Looking around, she realizes that the only way out is to go straight up the wall again, but she's so exhausted from all the fighting that she can barely make the climb. Just when she's about to lose her grip, Sarah pops out of the wall and pulls her to safety, but it doesn't look like she's happy to see her. Following the arrows, they finally make it all the way to the second entrance, but sure enough, there's a squad of cave mutants already blocking their path. Neither side is backing down, and while the girls stand their ground, the creature begins circling all around them until suddenly one of them jumps on top of Juno, and that's when the real battle begins. Flipping him around, Juno starts kneeing the creature straight in the balls while Sarah fights them off by any means necessary, using her pick and even biting out their throats like these freaks did to her friends. It's an absolute bloodbath, so f***ing bad that we had to black and white this for YouTube. And she jabs her thumbs straight into one of their eyes, as Juno feeds it one lit flare and brings her pick down into its skull, until finally, all of the creatures are dead. Now there's nothing standing between them and freedom, and that's when Sarah decides that it's finally time to get her revenge. Without saying a word, she faces Juno and lets the necklace fall from her hand before stabbing the pickaxe straight through her leg the moment that she looks towards the surface. Leaving her to die, Sarah disappears into the tunnels as more of the creatures start closing in, but Juno refuses to go down without a fight, pulling the weapon out of her own leg as she starts to turn around and face the swarm. With only a matter of feet left to go, Sarah can almost taste freedom when she makes a critical mistake, and it's because she wasn't paying attention, and ends up falling down a chute that leads right back into yet another pit full of bones. Stunned from the fall, she opens her eyes and realizes that she can see daylight climbing up a literal mountain of spines and skulls until finally she emerges from the cave somewhere on the other side of the mountain. Overcome with relief, she races down the hillside and through the forest until she finally gets to the cars. Luckily, they left the keys inside and she speeds back towards civilization without taking her foot off the gas, not stopping until she eventually pulls over to catch her breath on the side of a paved road. Heartbroken over the loss of her friends, she looks over only to see zombie Juno sitting in the passenger seat, and suddenly she wakes up back in the caves. Sitting across from her, she sees a vision of her daughter Jessica on the girl's 5th birthday, but all around she can hear the shrieks of the monsters closing in. It looks like Sarah didn't make it out after all, making all 6 victims down with no survivors. And if it's one thing we can all learn from this story, it's that the next time someone invites you to go caving, you really should just say F no. The Descent. Classic British horror movie. I remember when this came out, it went viral basically before things even went viral on the internet. I mean, this is nuts. And it looks like it was hard as to film this thing in the first place too. All the actresses had to be super swift on their feet, and man, dark caves, creepy monsters, and But anyways, let me know down in the comments if you would have done anything differently. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.